All right. Can you see the itinerary there?
Yeah.
All right. So I got super excited. I texted Dr. Piercy right after we got this. And I was like, oh, I can't wait for this.
Mm-hmm.
So again, things can still change from this, but it gives you a better idea of what it might look like. Because a lot comes down to what the schools, when they'll let us in.
Mm-hmm.
So the plan is to fly out on Sunday, May 16th. We'll go right to Prague. I don't think it was a direct flight. And that day, is a tough travel day. Dr. Pierce and I have both done this a couple times. Tough travel day. So you kind of just plow through. Someone from the tour group would meet us and they'd bring us back to the hotel and give us an orientation. Often you can't check in right away, but you just try to keep moving. You just try to stay awake as long as you can. And they'll give us an orientation and then we'll have the balance of the day free. Some people choose to take a nap and power through. I tend to just try to hang on, go to early dinner and go to bed. But it's just kind of a hang in there day. Then we hit the ground running on the next day. So they have us scheduled for a sightseeing, walking tour of Prague's historical center, which is when we get to see some really neat things. There's a guide that will accompany us and give us a tour. We've done that in every trip we've been on. And then in the evening, they have us scheduled for an introductory lecture on the Czech Republic's education system. And then we have an included group welcome meal, which is always one of my favorite things because everyone's now rested and ready to go and all excited for the beginning of the experience. Then the next day they have us going to all-day school visits. Now what that means, we don't know. It could be 2 schools where you go half a day. It could be 1 school where you spend the whole day, but they're going to have us doing school visits and we'll do those 2 days back to back. I personally like when they group them like 1 or 2 in a day where we don't have a cultural thing after that, because honestly, this is silly, but just for professional dress and clothing, it's just so much easier. And traveling with mostly females, you'll all appreciate that. So we do that for 2 days. And then Friday, super excited about this. This is a fun cultural day. Do a river cruise in the morning. And then we have some free time in the afternoon. I'm assuming probably like grab lunch on your own, kind of explore, because you'll have been around the city already. So you'll have your bearings a little bit, maybe do a little souvenir shopping. And then I think we talked about the puppetry being really big over there. I think that's supposed to be I thought, Dr. Piercy, didn't it originally say puppet performance?
I have it in my head as puppet performance.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting.
We'll have to confirm that, because that's, I'm sure whatever theater presentation they're doing is going to be great, but the legacy of puppetry in the Czech Republic is pretty impressive. So I'm hoping it's that.
I think the old itinerary said puppet show. So anyway, some sort of performance. Yeah. And then we did switch, and I think we talked about this in our course sessions when we met, that we were supposed to go to Dachau concentration camp, but then we asked if we could switch it to, how do you say it, Theresen?
Theresen, the German version is Theresienstadt.
And we decided that would be a much better visit. We were excited about that. You want to say? Yeah.
Yeah, Carolyn, in case you don't remember this, the Theresen, Dachau was one of the biggest concentration camps, but as I've been told since, it's just not a great visit. There's not much left of it, and there's a museum, but it's not, it was an important part of the concentration camp system, but it's not a great visitor experience, apparently. Theresen is much better, and it's also a really unique part of the history of the Holocaust. It was a forced labor camp. It wasn't an extermination camp, but it was kind of used as a way station for prisoners on their way to the bigger camps. And at one point in 1943-44, the International Red Cross began accusing the Germans of atrocities. And this is really odd because we're late in the war at this point, but for whatever reason, the Nazi leadership decided to try to mount a propaganda effort to prove that the Jews are really well treated in these camps. So they basically arranged for a visit from the International Red Cross, and they created within the camp a fake version of the camp through a process they called the Great Beautification, where they planted flowers and made gardens, and they put up carousels for the kids to play on, and they had an orchestra, and they had this whole tour planned out where the guides would take the Red Cross officials through the camp to see these carefully choreographed and scripted elements to show how great it was, and then they were going to film it. And they even made a movie out of it, a documentary called "The Führer Grants the Jews a Town," and apparently there's still a fragment of it left in the Memorial Museum of the Holocaust in Israel. But it's such an odd, because it's 1944, the war is out of control. Germany's gonna lose. And, the idea that at the same time they're fighting this war, they're trying to mount this insane effort to prove that, no, we're not killing anybody. makes it really, really unique. So I, as you can tell, am super excited about visiting that place. And I think it'll be a much better experience than Dachau.
Yeah, everyone we talked to said that it was better, and we tried to switch it for this year, and it was too late because of the way the itinerary was, and so that was one of the biggest changes we were able to make for next year by rescheduling. And I'm excited about that too. Again, it always sounds weird to say you're excited to go to a concentration camp, but you know what I mean. Carolyn, are you a reader?
What do you mean?
Do you just like to read for pleasure?
Yeah.
Oh, all right, because I read a great book. And it was about Holocaust survivors, but that's how I learned about Teresian a little bit. And I remember telling Dr. Piercy about it, but if you're not a big, I was just saying I would send the title to you, but it was very good. And it was about 3 women and their experience, and they ended up at Teresian, and I learned a lot, and it gave me some context for when we go. I was meant to suggest it in our class sessions, but then we weren't able to switch out of Dachau. Okay, so after the concentration camp, that's a full day tour. Then we depart Munich, and we depart for Munich on a private bus. So we're going to take the bus ride there. I forget if it's like 4 hours or something like that. 3.5. Yeah. And we always have a, good sightseeing, comfortable bus. And when we get there, we'll have a walking tour of Munich Center to get us orientated to it, so you can kind of have your bearings as well. And then the first day, oh gosh, I still can't say this castle names. We'll do a full day excursion to that castle.
Try it?
I can't do it.
Neuschwanstein.
That's as close as I'm going to get. All right.
I'm not even sure I'm saying it right, but I think it's Neuschwanstein.
And I think we're going to be there for most of the day. And my impression is some nature trails around that you can walk around, and some really great photo ops, and just the building itself, the castle itself is amazing. And we have talked about that, so you probably remember that. And Tuesday, an introductory lecture on German's education system. So we'll have one in each country, which is nice to get that background. Mm-hmm. That's usually somehow associated with the university that will give us that background. Mm-hmm. And then we'll do some school visits, and then we'll do more school visits on Wednesday morning, have a little free time. We want you to have free time in both cities, and then a farewell group meal, which is always a good experience too. And then we end. So it's packed out, but not so much that you don't have a little downtime, a little time to explore, and some exploring as a group and some exploring on your own. How does that sound?
Yeah, it looks really good. I'm excited.
It does look good. So again, once you interview and we have a full roster, we will probably over winter break reach out to all of you, figure out when we can meet. We'll meet in person 4, 5, 6 times. We'll see, how it plays out. I think we had 5 in-person meetings scheduled for this spring semester. So the goal of the pre-trip meetings, a couple goals. One is to build a sense of community and get to know each other. We don't want us all showing up at the airport not having any idea who we are. I mean, Caroline knows that too, but we're also recording this to send to some other people. And then the other one is to really develop some knowledge, right? Some contextual knowledge, some historical knowledge about where we're going, what we might see, and learn a little bit about the countries, and even start developing some questions so that we can be prepared to ask questions when we go to those school visits and the university lectures. I think the other thing you want to know is you'll have some work to do. So you'll have some community building activities to do. Those might require some small group meetings. It also might require some flip grid activities. And then Dr. Piercy had picked out a bunch of readings this time for us. And then we also did a short, was not a large undertaking, but a short group project to develop some knowledge about different aspects of the countries. Dr. Piercy, you want to add anything? I'm trying to think if I left anything out.
Well, I think you got it. I think the big part for people who are not Carolyn, who may be watching the video, is that the trip is meant to be, the experience is meant to be experienced, for lack of a better word. We're not going to be making you do a lot of classwork or readings. In fact, none of it during the experience itself. So it's all preamble to the actual trip, and the trip should be kind of the cherry on top of that cake. So the work we do is not onerous. It's not burdensome. I would hope people that would go through it would say that it's not only informative, but kind of fun. And it's to put you in a position to know a bit about the country before you land, even though we recognize there's no way to really get you set for what's going to be a really immersive experience. And I would say that during that trip, we pack a lot of living into 9 days. There's a lot to do. In fact, the only gripe we've ever gotten from anybody about our trips is sometimes it seems like there's too much, which I think is a good gripe. There's no laying around. There's, you're always on the go to see something. And these are obviously two cities where you can spend a lot more time than 9 days. So we really want you to wring as much experience out of that as you can. And that's why the classwork is all preamble before you actually get on the